Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
And welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, where we are getting wilder by the minute, a podcast where we break down and celebrate the films of Gene Wilder 1 minute at a time. Our focus this season 1 is Young Frankenstein, and I'm one of your co-hosts, Alan Sanders.
And I'm Walt Murray, your other co-host.
And joining us once again, we've got an actual doctor in our studio, someone who knows a little bit about the medical profession, Dr. Tim Ryan. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
I appreciate you taking time to lend some credibility to an otherwise silly podcast.
And I was going to say, risking your own personal credibility to be
I was
here.
worried about that a little, but we'll see how this goes.
Well, thankfully, with our tens of subscribers, you know.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to this next minute. When we last left our lecture hall, we had established, thanks to Dr. Ryan, that these kinds of lectures are very accurate. They're with a little license, maybe would have been a medical student more than an older guinea pig per se. But we established that this seemed a very realistic scenario for a medical classroom for kids going to medical school.
Yeah, is this a good way for us to make some extra money on the side? Maybe volunteering to be guinea pigs in a medical
Maybe
classroom?
so, yeah.
Well, I don't know. Not after this minute.
Yeah, this next minute may take that off the table.
All right. Well, let's go straight into it, because Reverend Johnson, who's told that he can put his knee down, he puts his knee down, is now sort of staring out in the classroom, not really knowing what's going to happen to him. Gene Wilder's character, Doctor Frankenstein, makes a comment about saying that there are involuntary and then voluntary reactions, and he gives us first an example of what is an involuntary reaction. Doc, from a medical perspective, when he kind of walks up and then takes him off guard with calling him a name and then pretending to knee him below the belt line, was that an accurate reflection of an involuntary reaction?
Sort of. I think for the most part, yes. We have involuntary, like if you touch a hot iron on accident, you immediately pull your hand away. So that's an involuntary reaction. If you see something in your peripheral vision, you'll move your head real quick. So you don't know you're doing it. So in a way, it's true. But if you see his reaction, a little complex for totally involuntary.
So there's a little bit more going on maybe there?
A little more, yeah.
And this is not an experiment they would actually do in the classroom?
No, I don't think so.
No, I think the tapping of the knee is a little bit better for showing the reflexes.
Yes.
What would be some other ways that you would test someone's involuntary reflexes or reactions versus voluntary? What would you do if somebody had nerve damage or something? How would you assess that?
It's mainly with your motor system with the reflex hammer. You can, ankles, knees, upper legs, arms. You can test your spinal cord, really. Each different level will have a different motor reflex. A lot of it links to your limbs. So that's one way. Scratching someone on the skin, light touch will cause a skin reflex. Vision, peripheral vision, someone will pull their head back. But it's almost always going to be just the motor reflexes with a reflex hammer.
Why would somebody like in your profession, why would you need to test that, and what does it indicate to you if you're not getting maybe a reaction? What does that show in terms of the individual?
It shows basically, a few things. It tests the peripheral nerve, which he talks about, which the peripheral nerve is going to be a nerve like outside your spinal cord or your brain. It tests the ability of that to carry this nerve impulse. Then it tests the ability of your spinal cord, your central nervous system, to integrate that and send another signal back to cause a reflex. So it will test various levels of your spinal cord.
Essentially, when he knees him in the crotch, that is the same type of reaction you would get from the knee, from the hammer to the knee, but probably not one that you would actually do.
Well, it's not this. I don't know how technical you want me to get and precise, but it's not really the same, because the knee is a stretch receptor. You're stretching that muscle, that tendon, sending a loop and causing specifically only the knee to have a reaction. So for, like I said, for all of his body to react, it's really not technically a reflex.
Gotcha.
It's more of a startle. It's more of a I don't know what you'd call it.
But it would be a little bit of maybe both.
A little bit of both. That's right.
Because the body does want to protect itself.
Yeah.
And
like
so
when
you don't have to think, here comes an incoming hit, I should probably move to protect myself. It'll happen.
Yeah, like if you walk down some stairs and forget one of the steps,
that's
your whole body,
how much
everything,
wine have I had?
right, will react. Your arms, your legs, you'll startle, or if you scare somebody, their head jerks, their arms fall back, so that your whole body sometimes can in synchronous have a reflex similar to this. So.
Now, he doesn't make any contact in the first one. He just pretends he's about to make contact to get a reaction in front of the students.
Right. So technically, his only reflex would be a visual, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
right, because nothing got touched.
Nothing got touched.
He did put his hand on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And then, what was the point in your mind of him using some kind of a derogatory? He almost to throw him under the bus initially first before actually doing anything physically.
Theater. That's all I can say.
Theater. It's all for show.
Well, I love Liam Dunn's facial expressions through this. When he first puts his hand on his shoulder, he kind of looks at him a little askance. And then when he does the first knee, he doesn't actually knee him at that point, but he gets this look of like, what in the Sam Hill are you doing?
Yes, the trust is completely gone.
Is shot
from this guinea pig. The minute he does the "why you son of" and he goes to knee him, he's like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, what kind of lunatic asylum am I in?
He does not look like he trusts this doctor at all at that point going forward. Yet he still voluntarily stays.
Yeah, stands there.
Apparently that's a voluntary reaction.
Yeah, you mentioned something, lunatic asylum. I just have to mention the imagery is he's a psychiatric patient because the two guys that come in with him have this look of orderlies in a psychiatric ward. Do you know what I mean? So that was my first thought when I saw those two guys. I'm like, oh, look at them. They've got him out of the asylum. That's what brought him here.
Really
that was my
funny.
thought when I saw the movie the first time.
That is true.
Well, that is
and they hand him that device, that torture device, whatever he's putting on his neck.
What kind of clamp that is?
Yeah, so
C-clamp. I don't know what that is.
So to get my kids to not actually flinch when I want to slap them, I just put a little clamp on the back of their head, and that's all I have to do.
Looks like Doctor Frankenstein would recommend that.
Well, and then, of course, you have him walk up, and they've got the whatever clamp this is that is supposedly clamped to the back of his head, and then he actually does knee him. That, I guess the science is off the rails at this point.
It's off the rails, yes, sir.
All right, well, let's try to find where maybe he got this idea and maybe just really extrapolated it. Because I have fallen asleep on my arm before to the point where, and I've done this in the middle of the night, I've rolled over and my dead feeling hand hits my face because I have no control over it. And I think there's someone else in the bed because I don't feel from my hand that it was my own hand hitting my face. I felt like somebody else's hand hitting my face, and I freaked out. So did I deaden or put those nerves to sleep in such a way that I didn't have a reaction?
Radial nerve, people sleep on it wrong, and it goes dead. Either sensory nerve portion or the motor nerve. So I don't know how you hit yourself in the face, though. It was just limp.
And as I rolled over, it kind of like rolled with me, and it kind of, maybe it hit my chest or I felt like it hit my face. I don't know. I just had it, I rolled over, and I remember feeling something hitting me, and I was like, oh my God, there's somebody else in the bed. Because it didn't feel like me. I didn't have the sense of me hitting myself. I felt somebody else's hand hitting me, and it freaked me out.
Yeah, so your arm apparently had lost sensation and awareness.
Because what he's trying to, I guess, say here is if you can pinch or put pressure on the right nerves, you can stop a reaction or stop a nerve impulse.
Yes, but it undermines the whole concept of a reflex arc. So a reflex arc is really going to be one spinal segment on your spinal canal. Mm-hmm. So to put something up on your neck to stop all the reflexes below, it undermines the whole understanding of a reflex.
Collapsed at that point.
I guess. I'm not sure what that clamp is actually compressing because, I mean, your spinal column is inside your bones.
Right.
So
what do you
he's really clamping it just like blood vessels and stuff. So it doesn't make any sense.
All right, so it's strange.
Let's give him a headache.
Yeah,
so now it's strange credulity.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, so when he does do this reaction, I do find it interesting because he's trying to make the point for the classroom. He's like, look, he completely can't react. And yet the camera pans in, his eyes are crossing, and you hear him going, because he does get kneed in the nads here. And apparently, maybe the 5 seconds wasn't enough because he obviously is reacting.
Yeah, I can guarantee no matter how long you clamp there, that's not long enough.
It's never long enough.
Yeah, for those of us who've been hit there, it definitely, this is not how it works.
No, something like that. I mean, would that be considered a violation of maybe your Hippocratic oath to actually
harm a patient intentionally, yeah. Like the first rule is do no harm. So, oops, he just violated a couple.
Do you think he broke that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he pretty much shattered the Hippocratic Oath here.
All right. So what else is happening here in this scene? We're watching, of course, the guy Liam Dunn, the actor who plays basically Mr. Hilltop.
Yes.
Mr. Hilltop in this. Last scene in 1974, earlier in the year, last scene is Reverend Johnson from Blazing Saddles. You can see how good his facial reactions are because he says nothing besides a couple of moans.
Yep.
Everything about him is facial reaction. It's eye, it's facial contortions, it's stares, and he does such a good job.
He kills this scene. I mean, he sells it so well. I mean, you get the feeling that his nerves are kind of clamped off here. He stands up straighter, and then that shot of his face with the crossed eyes is amazing. But we were talking before this, the actor, Liam Dunn, by this point in his life had horrible emphysema.
Right.
And they were saying that between takes here, he would have horrible coughing fits. And one of the people from the crew came up and said, hey, can we get you some water? Can we get you anything else? Well,
they would even offer to give him some oxygen or vitamins.
Yeah.
Like, can we get you your oxygen? Can we get you? And you know what he would ask for?
Cigarette.
A cigarette.
I knew it.
Yeah. Why is that? Does that actually give a temporary reprieve to the emphysema?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Maybe just calmed him down. It was his like pacifier. You know? Just
I guess
comfort.
so.
I think you just get to that point where you're like, it is what it is. I prefer to smoke and realize I'm dying, but I don't care.
Yeah, I guess y'all probably don't prescribe a box of Marlboros
No,
to
for the cough.
help your emphysema.
When you have a persistent heavy
Flu
cough,
season, take a pack of cigarettes.
your problem is you're smoking the filter. Let's
Yeah.
get you some unfiltered Camels. That'll be good for you.
Yeah, I'm just going to take a shot in the dark here. That's not what is recommended.
And that's not.
I don't think smoking in general.
Probably not a great idea.
All right, so what else is going on in this scene? You mentioned the orderlies, which I'm glad you brought that up. They act like orderlies because the minute he's about to do an experiment, they come close just in case the patient is either trying to run away or react in a way that's not expected.
Yeah.
I had never really paid attention to those two guys before, but talk about an involuntary reaction. They just slowly move where they're supposed to watch the patient.
Yeah, and then you have the reactions from Mr. Hilltop are just fantastic. And you have his reactions where he kind of realizes he's in a bizarre world, but Doctor Frankenstein just continues to lecture, continues with the experiment, and is completely unfazed by what's going on.
I think we should mention again that this guy that we saw earlier this week enter this classroom with the box that we saw he initially was having the tug of war. We assume it's the same guy since he's holding the box.
I think so.
What's his name?
The caretaker of the Frankenstein estate.
Herr Fockstein. Let's remind everybody that the role that I most remember this actor playing, and the actor that played Fockstein is a guy by the name of Richard Hayden. He was actually Max Detweiler in The Sound of Music. He was the uncle that kept trying to put the kids in the performance for the particular night that, of course, the father, Christopher Plummer, would have nothing to do with it. He goes, they are not going to be out there to sing for the public. And to come to find out that thanks to Max, that allowed them the ploy to be able to escape the Nazi tyranny and head across the Swiss Alps.
I see that now.
Max Detweiler.
Well, and it's funny because he does play a pretty serious part here. You know, he's not involved in the slapstick. He is a very serious actor in this film.
And he really only has this one scene, really. Is
Yeah,
just
a couple
here.
lines.
You never really see him again in the movie.
No, that's it.
And I looked at his hands. Remember how I said the hands that were wrestling in the coffin kind of had some
they're
thicker
quaking
hands?
and
No,
had
it seemed like
gloves
it was
on.
like, no, he didn't have gloves.
He didn't have gloves.
No, it was just bare hands. But I thought it was like, I don't think it's the same hands. I think it's a different actor wrestling.
Interesting.
Because when he's holding the box, he seems so much more frail than the guy that was wrestling with the skeleton to try to get the box.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So we've got Max Detweiler, who's interested in the lecture going on. He's in the very back of the room paying attention. And I like how Mel Brooks doesn't let us forget that there is somebody different in the room watching this. Because, as you pointed out earlier, everyone's dressed in white lab coats. Everyone's younger. Everyone's taking notes. He's the only one in a dark suit with a hat, walking in, sitting dead center in the back of the room.
And he almost seems kind of out of time, too. That
His style of dress seems a little older than what we even see through Gene Wilder's lab coat as a more modern-looking suit.
Yeah. And, well fit, and he is established as a, medical professional, and this gentleman obviously is somebody else.
I got to ask you a question, Doc. Earlier, we saw Gene Wilder's character rinsing his fingers in a bowl of water.
I saw that too, yeah.
Did that happen back when
No.
in the days of chalkboards and chalk dust? Did you have one of your professors with a little bowl of water?
I never saw that, but I
fingers spritzed?
never saw that.
Never saw that before.
Nope. I was wondering why that's in there, but I thought it was funny. I don't know why. Just the whole way he did it, it just struck my funny bone. I don't know why he did it, and then the way he sort of deliberately got that towel and sort of like this air of I'm the professor. I'm clean. I don't know. I just like
it. It is establishing a tone for this character.
Yeah, it really is.
That he's not only very well read and very educated, but he's very particular about his manners. He's very particular about how he presents himself.
And he's dressed very well. 3-piece suit and his tie. And
Did that happen with college lecturers? Were they dressed?
I think so. Yeah, as I remember. Yeah, in medical school, I think so. Yeah, they were dressed more formally.
Well, he's trying to have an air of sanity. Again, kind of pushing off that old Frankenstein reputation.
But it is interesting because if it is true, because I don't disagree with the doctor on this one. Now that I'm watching it, I cannot help but think this is a guy that's probably being held in the neighboring sanitarium.
Right.
He's being kept for some sort of psychological problems.
Yes.
So he's not going to report any issues. Nobody's going to believe him anyway, right? We're seeing already this juxtaposition, Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder, of crazy on one side of the screen, the guy who's pretending to not be crazy or doesn't want to be associated with crazy on the other side of the screen. So you're already seeing these two worlds coming together in this lecture, and then he ends up doing something pretty crazy to this guy, showing that there is a depth that he's willing to maybe take his doctor's oath a little bit further than you should.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say if you're a student sitting in that class, you're probably never going to question the difference between voluntary and involuntary reactions.
Probably not again.
No.
No.
No, I'm not going to volunteer either.
No, absolutely not.
All right, so as we begin to wrap up minute number 9 here, we've got Dr. Tim Ryan, who is a family practitioner, a family physician. You actually have your own practice.
Have my own practice? Yeah, 25 years.
And you don't treat your patients like
I don't treat them like that.
Mr. Hilltop here.
No, I haven't ever done that.
It probably never will.
No.
All right, anything else you want to add for this minute and what you've seen so far of the movie?
I like the movie. This minute's different than the last one, and I like how, actually I didn't mention it, but the background of the chalkboard, all that's really accurate anatomy. So everything like the minute before seemed really accurate and precise, and then this minute with the clamp on the head and seems to start going a different direction.
Yeah. But it does lend a lot of credibility to what they were trying to do here, trying to make it accurate and make it believable.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, yeah, up until we have our guinea pig here, where
yes,
it turns into a little bit of a... But I think it does. It adds later. We now see he was willing to try experiments to prove his theories.
Right.
And
It's
he was
definitely
willing to take
unorthodox.
it maybe a little further than he should.
Sounds right. That looks like what he's trying to do here, yeah.
Which sounds exactly like a Frankenstein.
So if the students had walked out and gone to the people who ran the school and said, hey, here's what just happened in class, what do you think the reaction would have been?
No reaction. I mean, if he'd done, I think it's a big hypothetical.
Yeah.
But, professors like that, they were the faculty, and so they were sort of in charge. So I don't think it would have gone very far. Let's put it that way.
Right. Besides, Brainy Smurf's got more questions coming up later.
Brainy Smurf, yeah.
Nobody's worried about the guy. Do you notice there's nobody cares, nobody worries, nobody gets out of their seat. It's the teacher doing an experiment in front of the class. They're just taking notes.
Yep.
They were probably impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, they're going to try it with their friends back home after standing on a beer keg for about 20 minutes.
I can't wait to do this to one of my patients.
Exactly. All right, Doc, thank you so much for being our guest.
Thanks for having
here.
me. I really enjoyed it.
And maybe we've turned you on to one of Gene Wilder's movies. You might enjoy.
I may enjoy
all the
it.
way to the end.
Uh-huh.
So don't forget to subscribe. Who knows what we'll say about the rest of the movie?
Sounds good.
I have a feeling that you're going to find a lot of unorthodox medicine through the rest of it.
All right. Well, as we wrap up minute number 9 here, I want to remind you once again that this whole format really owes itself to Alex and Pete of the Star Wars Minute, StarWarsMinute.com, who helped create the daily format. And, of course, if you want to learn about other movies that are following this same format, go to the moviesbyminutes.com website. You see a whole lot of movies that are already being broken down 1 minute at a time. Who knows? Maybe there's a classic in there that you like, from the airport movies, which are different than the airplane movies, to Die Hard and Indiana Jones. There's a whole slew of movies out there. So if you're enjoying this particular podcast, if you stumbled across this, there's a whole lot you can kind of maybe get into.
And if you are enjoying this podcast, we would encourage you to go out to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating, make a comment there so your vote is counted. But we really, really do appreciate the folks that have already done that, and people who are commenting on Facebook and Twitter, and found us on Stitcher. And we've even noticed over the last couple of days a lot of people who we don't know who have subscribed to the page and have found us through those different means. So thank you so much. We really appreciate y'all letting us know how you feel about everything.
Go to thewilderride.com. That's our main website. It's got the links to all of our social media, and we do actually respond to you folks on Facebook and Twitter. So, if you see the show, if you've got a particular memory, you've listened, whatever, drop us a line. Who knows? We may respond right back to you.
Yeah, and if you find something that we've missed, please let us know that as well. We'll try to get back and point those things out.
Until tomorrow, where we get to minute number 10 to wrap up the week, and we see what happens after they take the clamp off the back of this poor patient who's been kneed in the nads. What happens to him, and what's with Max Detweiler in the back of the classroom? Is he going to sing a tune?
It's all coming together.
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
We'll see.
Frankenstein.